think we're live. I've never used this thing before, but it seems pretty cool. I
Yeah.
think once we work out the kinks, because it's more, like I said, it's more geared toward um, actual podcast recording. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I guess we can dive into it. We're recording shit almost a week before the election, so 6 days before the election. But yeah, I guess it'd be cool to talk about both our final thoughts. We also have the Ben Shapiro, Sam Harris debate pulled up from the Free Press, which I thought was pretty good. I thought both sides made good arguments. I could honestly see arguments for both Kamala and Trump, as much as I despise Trump. But yeah, I think maybe getting our initial thoughts, and then if we need to, we can dive into some other things that these guys said.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, pretty much feel the same. The debate was really good, in my opinion. And and yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm very conflicted. I think me and you, or me especially, are we're like the remaining few hundred, maybe thousand people that are still undecided about the election. Um, I could never bring myself to vote for either one of these candidates, but the only calculation that I've been grappling with for a while now is which of the candidates would be the least worst option for America and the world. And yeah, I don't know. I just genuinely grapple with that. I think that both candidates are have a lot of flaws, and and yeah, I think it's just never been easier to be politically homeless and just very disappointed and I don't know, just very disheartened by seeing that or asking yourself if this is the best that America has to offer, and I don't know,
Yeah,
I don't think it is, and so yeah, I
I
guess
think
that's where I'm at.
there's one kind of fallacy that I wanted to address with Sam Harris because I think Sam and maybe a lot of people maybe a lot of political migrants that view Kamala as like this return to normalcy. I don't know how true that is. Like, I don't know how voting for Kamala Harris just gets us back to 2008 politics or some kind of semblance of what people remembered as being normal. Like, I don't see the Republican Party just going back to, their normal conservative ways. And I also don't see progressives with how crazy they've been with the whole trans things. Like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know which one makes it worse. Like having Donald Trump in office or just having Kamala in office and then feeling empowered. Like, so I think one, that's one kind of fallacy. But as far as there's a lot of topics to touch on. But so I think the biggest one that we can argue for Donald Trump is his foreign policy. I think his foreign policy is his general stance on Iran, the way he was able to broker the Abraham deals. I think he, I think he has a good sense for that. I think he has a good sense of right and wrong. I don't think kind of like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, like they try to play both sides into a bit, and they try to have this multilateral approach to things, which doesn't always work, as we've seen with Iran. This multilateral, multi-nation approach to trying to get them to not build nuclear weapons just meant that we were just essentially placating a lot of their demands and giving them a lot of money, opening up their funds. And we saw what that did when they were able to fund groups like Hamas. So I think Donald Trump has been stronger, especially on the Middle East. There's an argument to be made that he wasn't that strong, especially when it comes to Putin or North Korea. Like, he kind of cozied up to these people. That's up for debate, but I think the argument is there that foreign policy wise, he's a lot stronger.
Did it break up?
I don't, no,
No.
no, I don't know if you wanted to react to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think that, almost any policy issue other than tariffs, it's really it's really hard for me to justify preferring Kamala Harris over Trump. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just you go down the list, and I think policy wise, there's just even foreign policy or domestic policy. I think Trump trying to tariff every product coming in from the US is insane. And yeah, I mean, but other than that, I think the biggest thing for me with Trump is what he's done, his character, and yeah, I think the fact that, January 6th, him trying to steal the election, I think those things that he did to America and what he's capable of doing, I think that is the biggest reason why, one, I would never support him, but I do grapple with that reality of what is he capable of doing in the second term, and especially when, that argument that Sam Harris made is that, the generals that held him back during the first term and the sane people, most of those people aren't going to be in power. They're not going to be in those same positions. The only one that I can think of that's not crazy and who I think would have been a fine president is Mike Pompeo, and hopefully he's the Secretary of State, and that does give me hope. But other than that, I think he's going to want to fill his cabinet positions and all the positions available with just sycophants and people that love to kiss his ass, and that does worry me. What is he capable of doing? And this guy, he is a crazy narcissistic human being. It's just and so yeah, I think, I don't know, just not to ramble on, but I think for me, policy wise, the only thing that I can think of is tariffs. Other than that, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to crime, when it comes to foreign policy, especially the way Biden's just been, you know, it just,
I don't. Yeah, I think I might have cut off.
uh,
Um,
yeah, it said it was
but you
going
were talking
through a
about his.
reconnection process.
Oh, I think it cut off
Fuck
right
is
when you were
this?
talking about um, the only thing you disagree with him is there.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I disagree with Trump that I can think of, in policy wise, domestic policy wise, is tariffs, and that is a big thing. Yeah, and what is Trump capable of doing? I don't know. I don't know if he just talks a lot, and a lot of people do say that. Don't take Trump seriously. Don't take him literally. Just he says a lot of shit, and I get that argument, but yeah, it's still worrying. Who knows again what he's capable of doing, but other than that, other than the tariffs, and I do see an argument that, I don't think Trump is going to do anything too crazy because, at the end of the day, he wants to be liked. He cares about his popularity more than anything. And yeah, if a policy and an insane policy is not working, I don't think he's the type to, remain committed to it. Um, and the same thing with Kamala Harris. This is why I think that overall, I think that a lot of people are just like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. This is the most important election of our life. And, I can see arguments about how it is an important election, but I think the hand wringing of it's the end of the world and oh my God, that doesn't worry me. And
Yeah,
so yeah, I don't know.
I yeah, I policy wise, I struggle to find really anything that I disagree with Trump. I overall I do like his rhetoric on the southern border. Like immigration is a huge issue right now. A lot of people are just streaming in, and we do unfortunately have a lot of these acts of violence, like those three girls that were killed in various states, and they had no reason to be here. Those immigrants that came in, but so I generally agree on a lot of the things, a lot of the policies, and I'm sure there's policies that if I was, really nitpicky on, that I would disagree with. But overall, like Trump talking about lowering taxes, cutting down on inflation, like we mentioned before, his foreign policy, the border, things like that. I tend to agree with him. But for me, the disqualifying thing and the reason why I don't believe he should be allowed to run is simply the fact that he did try to overturn the election. And there's good evidence and a good argument to be made that he incited an insurrection on January 6th by calling on his supporters to go and riot and to try to stop the count. Like that was what he was literally shouting. Him and Rudy Giuliani were trying to stop Mike Pence from essentially counting the electoral votes. And he also called the governor of Georgia, I think it was a couple days before, maybe a week before, to try to help him find 11,000 votes. So for those two reasons alone, like that whole stretch of time from December to January, that whole month where he was just trying to get this thing overturned, like I don't understand if people don't, like I don't know how that doesn't detonate with people. Like for me, it didn't. Like I'll be honest, like January 6th didn't seem like that big of a deal until I started looking into it and really started following what Trump actually did that leading up to that day and on that day. Um, and yeah, and then once I realized like his actual actions, like it just, for me, it immediately disqualified him as a sitting president. And the fact that he still says that he won that election, the fact that he still want to admit that he lost that one, like it's just, we live, it's a very, for me, it's a very basic argument. We live in a democracy, and either you accept that fact, then you believe in the veracity of the election and the electoral process, like you believe that, these votes matter, or you believe that the whole thing is a lie and that we're just living in, you know, a farce, like the whole thing is a farce. And that to me is the consequence of Donald Trump. Like that to me is the consequence of his rhetoric, of his cult of personality that people don't seem to realize that they're in. Like that should be immediately disqualifying. Like he's defiling like the most basic thing that we hold valuable, which is our democracy and the right to elect our leaders. And it completely shits on that. And so for me, that was the main reason why I won't vote for him. I am concerned for what he can do in the future. I don't think that it can be that. I don't know. I've been wrong before when I try to make predictions, but um, like it's just how many stress tests can the system take? And then one of the things that not not so much directly on his candidacy, but one of the things that I noticed about the people that defend Trump, like they become sycophants and apologists for him as well. I don't like Ben in this argument or debate that he had with Sam Harris on the Free Press. He just becomes an apologist for a lot of the things that Trump does. And like we've said before, there's arguments to be made that Trump's policies are better for us as, just normal citizens, and there's that they're overall better for, the safety of the world, right? If you just want to look at it from that perspective where, terrorism is going to go down, he's going to support our allies. He is going to make our European allies kind of take a more direct approach in NATO by making them pay more and care more about their security. And so those types of policies just make the world a safer place. And then domestically, there's just better policies on immigration, taxes, and things that we talked about. So I don't see why those two have to be separate. Like I don't see why people have to be apologists for Trump and then also try to defend his policies. Like the two can be, like it's just a trade-off essentially. It's just two bad choices.
Yeah, and it's the worst aspect of Trump, the fact that, he demands to be treated like a king, and you can't even criticize the man in good faith, right? Any type of criticism of him, he immediately views you as an enemy. And that has always been one of my biggest gripes about him, is the fact that you can't criticize again in good faith, because nobody should be above criticism. Nobody should be above any type of we don't have kings in this country for a reason, right? We have presidents that we elect, and they work for us, and we should, we have the full right to criticize and to judge and and so forth. But yeah, it's the one of the worst aspects of Trump, and how he's turned the Republican Party into this cult of personality, and people are just forced to kiss his ass, and that's how you curry favor with him. The more you kiss his ass, the better you do. And any type of criticism of him, he will destroy you in any way he knows how. And this has created a chilling effect with so many, former sane conservatives or reasonable voices, where they ask themselves, well, I don't necessarily judge them for it, but they are showing themselves to be lacking in bravery. where they ask themselves, well, what should I do? Do I call him out and, r- ruin my career and lose all my money and lose my livelihood, or do I keep my mouth shut and make excuses for him and continue to be part of the system? And that's what's happened. So many of these Republicans have decided to go the latter route, and you see it even with these prominent political commentators like Ben Shapiro, where you can tell that, I think for the most part, Ben Shapiro is an honest actor, and he, better than most, this isn't saying much, but better than a lot of conservatives, if Trump does something really ridiculous and we're like just so over the top, he will criticize. But you can tell he still bends over backwards to justify a lot of his actions. And the biggest example of this is January 6th. The biggest example of this is what happened, like you said, not just during that day, but leading up to that day, where it wasn't just the fact that, he called a governor basically asking him to find, quote unquote, 11,000 votes. He just needed to find those 11,000 votes, pressuring him, clearly abusing his power in never seen before way. But he created this scheme with the fake electors plot to go. He's sending fake people, fake electors, to act like they were the real electors. Right? This is fraud. This is a man who's clearly plotting to steal and overturn the will of the people, the election. And yeah, I just can't imagine the amount, like, people would be, the amount of vocal ire that we would hear, the never ending diatribes that we would hear from Republicans and conservatives if Obama had ever tried anything sort of closely of this remote. Like, can you even they would hang him. Like, this is treason, but put him in a death camp. This is the worst thing ever. I can see it now. Imagine if Obama had done anything, anything remotely like, imagine for whatever reason he loses in 2012 to Mitt Romney, and he fails to concede the election, and he spends months and months arguing in these stupid ass, fake ass court cases where they're all just clearly bullshit. And he spends months denying the election when everybody around him is telling him that he won. And then he comes up with this plot, this scheme to overturn the election. And by the grace of God, his vice president Joe Biden decides not to go through with overturning the election. But can you imagine? Like, we wouldn't be talking about impeachment. We wouldn't be talking about, is it an insurrection or not? The Republicans would be calling for his head to be on a pike. And so yeah, I think it's just really sad how we've reached a point in our politics where there's just no accountability. Like, there's no accountability, and there's, like, this is a thing that I think a lot of people miss on both sides, right? There's no accountability on both sides. This is what's so disappointing about politics. And the more that, all the years that I followed it, like, as you grow older, you just realize that there's no accountability, and there's no good that really ever comes of it, because they're so corrupting on either side. You're forced to lie and bullshit, and there's not, no matter what happens next week on Tuesday, we're not going to have full accountability for either Trump, for what he did, and the fact that he may very well be president again, and we're going to reelect a man who did one of the worst things you can think of to a country. And either he's going to be president again, or Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris is representative of so much wrong that happened, especially in 2020 with COVID and the lockdowns and the masking of the children, and so much pain and suffering that these people unnecessarily caused, and the rioting, the BLM riots, we still haven't had any type of accountability, any type of, oh, we fucked up or we did wrong in this. No, it's just pure denial. And so yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just, it to me, it's just, I find myself in a really just sad place more than anything, because no matter what happens next week, we're not gonna have a and the biggest thing over,
But I think, oh,
yeah, what?
I was just going to say, like, that's, I think, one of the biggest things that's missing today is a media apparatus that can hold these people accountable. And
Yeah.
so it's sad to see a lot of like mainstream media, like the New York Times, especially a lot of the publications that we used to trust, like that was kind of like an accountability system. And now, especially lately, it just seems like all of their editorial decisions just seem like it's just focused solely on whatever the right
They're
does or
just
whatever
so,
Trump
yeah, they're
does.
just so clearly ideologically driven. And yeah, I think it's, we should have a media journalistic class that cares about the truth. But I think that Trump has corrupted their minds so much in a way that they view the threat that he poses in their mind as so grave that, they're willing to overlook so much of what the Democrats have done wrong. And they feel like if they are honest about certain aspects of the Democrats, it's only going to help the Republicans. And that's just I think overall that is the saddest thing to me about, another thing about the political punditry and the class, and just the society that we live in, as like there's so much hypocrisy on both sides. Like, you see it every day. You see the hypocrisy. You see the one day we have this national conversation about the comedian who made that joke. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into this real quick. I don't know what you thought about. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's heard about it from now, but we should probably explain what happened first.
The Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he basically had, he was a presenter at the Trump rally, he gets on stage, and then he makes a joke about Puerto Rico being a floating
Yeah, pile of
island of
garbage.
trash, yeah, pile of garbage, which, I mean, the joke wasn't even that funny. It didn't really land with anybody. Nobody really laughed.
Yeah.
But I think you have to understand who Tony Hinchcliffe is. Again, if you've seen clips of him, you understand that he's kind of a roast comedian. And even Jon Stewart came out in defense of him and said that he's funny. And Jon Stewart is by no means a conservative. But yeah, I saw a bunch of people get up in arms about it. Even Bad Bunny got all butthurt about it and
But I
made
don't
this
know.
weird video. But
The way I kind of took it was, I get that he's an insult comedian, and I get that, if you're in a comedy club, I completely understand that, people talk shit, and, I'm not one to get offended over jokes. It's just jokes. But I don't know. I just don't, if you're going to make a joke like that, quote unquote, a joke, like, well, I feel like you shouldn't, like, if there should be something funny, you shouldn't make people laugh. At least you're funny, you're offending, but for the sake of being funny. At least you're being funny, right? You made me laugh, and so it makes up for the fact that you said something offensive, right? But with this, it just, I didn't even see the joke of it. Like, I don't understand. Oh, it's like, and then, okay, again, if you're at a comedy club, I understand, but you're at a political rally, and it didn't even seem like a joke. It's just like, oh well, Puerto Rico's a pile of garbage. And then, I don't know, I don't understand how would you expect people to react. What it reminded me of a lot was, um I mean, there's still these videos on YouTube, but especially in like the early 2010s and mid 2010s, there was so many of these YouTube prank videos that were becoming super popular, and these fucking douchebag YouTubers were going viral, just doing the most obnoxious, and recording them and pissing people off in the most obnoxious ways, where they would, people would be walking down the sidewalk, and then some guy would come and, like, I don't know, throw a pie in some guy, random dude's face, and then they'd be recording, and then the guy would be like, what the fuck? Like, obviously pissed off about the punch this guy. And then the guy be like, oh, it's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank. Chill, chill, chill. And he's like about to get beat up. It's just a prank. It's just a prank. And that's what the joke kind of reminded me of, was just like, it's just a prank, bro. It's like if I'm walking down the street and I see some overweight girl, and she's, okay, she's ugly or something, and then I'm just like, hey, you fat ugly bitch, you're a fat ugly bitch. And then she's like, what the fuck, like, what's your problem? And then I'm like, oh, it's just a joke, I'm just joking, like, it's just a joke, like, what's the problem? It's like that's the way I kind of took the Tony Hinchcliffe thing. It's like, well, I just called your country a pile of garbage, and then I retreated back into my it's just a joke. And it's like, well, I don't understand how you don't. Okay, you can call it a joke, you can call it what you want, but of course people are going to get mad. Of course people are going to get, agitated by these things. Again, I'm not one to get offended. I'm not going to go cry about, he called Puerto Rico. I'm not even Puerto Rican, but it's still, I don't know, the way I kind of, like the way Tony Hinchcliffe, after the joke, after, everything went viral, on Twitter, he comes out and he's like, oh, well, you need to chill out. It was just a joke. And I don't know. Again, I understand the aspect of the fact that, yeah, at the end of the day, this guy's just a comedian. He's just talking shit. I get that. Okay. But again, I don't understand how you don't expect people to get mad at these things. I don't understand how you don't, like, you just called my country a pile of trash. Not mine specifically, I'm just saying generally. You call me me in my hometown, like, let's just say, oh, I just called San Diego a pile of trash. Well, I'm not gonna, oh, I'm just joking. Like, what? Like, oh, you're a fat bitch. Like, I was just joking. Like, what? Like, again, like, you can say these
Yeah, I
things,
think
you can insult, you can do it and go behind, retreat into your I'm just joking phase, but don't be surprised when people get mad at it. Obviously, like, what? I don't know. It's kind of like this autistic, like, people not realizing when offense is being made, right? Some autistic people don't understand, like, they're just very blunt and they don't understand the concept of taking offense. And that's what it kind of reminded me as well. It was just like, well, why are you mad, bro? Like, what are you, like, well, of course, like, why wouldn't people be mad? I don't understand. What do you think?
yeah, I think maybe that's a whole other conversation, but I do think overall I'm not somebody that's going to pearl clutch, and like I think jokes are
Yeah,
jokes and I'm not going to be offended by what a lot of
yeah,
times what people say, but there's definitely a time and a place for it. And I do think that comedians a lot of the times, especially recently with Joe Rogan, where they've tried to popularize this notion that, oh, he was just joking. And like they try to kind of hide behind it a little bit,
yeah,
which overall I do agree with it. If somebody, like you mentioned, is in a comedy club or it's a proper situation where the jokes are going to be flying, you
yeah,
shouldn't be so easily offended and you should have a thick skin. I do think that some of the outrage is maybe a
yeah,
little bit, I don't know, exaggerated or embellishing, but I do see why people would feel
yeah,
that you were joking, but it was still offensive. And I don't know, I think both comedians and people that took offense maybe need to meet in the middle a little bit. Comedians, like I said, especially recently, have just been hiding behind this. Well, I'm just joking, or I'm just a comedian, and everything's up for to
yeah,
be joke. Which generally I do agree with. I do think we should be able to laugh at ourselves and even the most serious things. Like Ricky Gervais has a lot of good Holocaust jokes, but I
yeah.
wouldn't
Again,
tell
like,
a
there's
Holocaust joke.
jokes, but I don't know. The thing about it, the biggest thing for me was the fact that I didn't even
It's
get
like
the
it's like
joke
telling a
aspect of it.
Holocaust joke
But
at
okay,
Auschwitz. Like you're at an
no, but
Auschwitz memorial
I
and
feel
you're
like
just like
that's
you're
different
telling.
because you can, like, again, like, I'm not easily offended. You can find the humor. I like dark humor, right? There's life is dark, right? Life is fucked up. There's, suffering and pain all around us, and making dark humor kind of, makes light of it to a certain degree, but you kind of just laugh at, death in the face. And I appreciate dark humor, especially funny dark humor. But for me, what the biggest gripe I had with the thing was, it wasn't even funny. Like, again, it was just an insult more than anything. It was just like, oh, your country's a pile of garbage. And then what? I'm just joking. Like, one, it's not it's not funny. Like, what do you? You're not even. You're just insulting. Like, you're just in.
No,
I don't.
he
Not
wasn't
to.
talking to like Puerto Ricans or
Huh?
he was speaking in front of it. It's not like he was talking to a bunch of
Yeah.
like the
Yeah, it was just
context
like
didn't
it's
make
just a
sense. He was
random like, oh
yeah.
well, Puerto Rico's a pile of like what? And then like, okay, well, obviously, again, this isn't a joke. That's an insult. Like, there's no joke. What's the punchline? The punchline is the Puerto Rico's a garbage country. Like, there's no punchline for me. But my original point before we got into all this was the hypocrisy. How there's so much fucking hypocrisy, and this happened with Tony Hinchcliffe, and the left goes up in arms, and I understand. Obviously they're going to jump on this after labeling the whole rally a Nazi rally, but then yesterday Biden, he's on this call with who knows who, and he calls the Trump supporters garbage. And now what do we see? Now what did Trump and everybody's jumping on this? Oh my God, they called us all garbage. Biden called us all garbage. Now we're the victims. Now it's our turn to play the victim card. And again, from an outsider's perspective, as a person who's just like, I've always never considered myself any type of team player for either side, right? I didn't care who won. I'm just interested in observing nature and humans. The obvious hypocrisy is just so like, again, today I've just been like, I kind of want to retire from not politics and but just there's just so much hypocrisy because it's just now the conservatives are now just playing the same game. And okay, yes, Biden shouldn't have called all the Trump supporters garbage. Okay, I get it, but come on, dude. Like, again, now it's your guys is trying to play the victim. Oh my God, he called us all garbage, and oh my God. And 2 days ago, you were saying about how, oh, it's just like he's just talking shit. He's just saying that. Like, I don't know, dude. It's so exhausting for me to just see so many people, again, on both sides. It's all just a game, and that's the way they're seeing it. Like the Republicans, they they lost they lost points when that Tony Hinchcliffe said that, and now they're like, oh well, now we can make up those points by it's our turn to be victims, and it's just so clear, right? That's what's happening, right? Now the conservatives are like, no, no, now we're the victims, now it's our turn to play the card of we're the being unfairly judged, and yeah, it's just
And I
so.
think the hypocrisy thing, like you're going back to like Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris, you can see it on both sides. And I think Sam did a good job. I think it was earlier on in the debate, but Sam asked Ben something along the lines of, Ben, if I told you that 5 or 6 or in 2015 you would be supporting a candidate that talked about grabbing women by the pussy or owning a teen pageantry so he can go in the locker rooms, basically questioning his ethics at that point. And then Ben goes on this diatribe of how things change and essentially just being, for all intents and purposes, a hypocrite. Like he's willing to compromise on his morals just because his personal candidate just fits better with his political ideals. And the same thing with Sam Harris, right? It's on both sides where Sam Harris, they were talking about Biden's dementia and how Kamala Harris and the entire Biden administration has been covering up for the fact that we've all seen that Biden has dementia. Like he's an 80-year-old man and he's obviously failing mentally, and they all covered it up. And it wasn't until the debate where there was just like this, oh my God, big reveal that Biden is not mentally there. And they put this point blank to Sam Harris and said, well, has the Democratic Party been lying? And Sam went on this weird rambling thing where he said, well, no, I can kind of see how the Biden campaign was trying to work around. Has like, no, they're obviously lying. Like they're lying, and they're lied to all of us about him being a capable candidate and a capable president and somebody that still has the mental faculties to be president. And both sides get compromised, and both sides get compromised because they don't want to cede political points. They don't want to concede a little bit, even a little bit, because conceding to them just means that, oh shit, I'm going to potentially lose the election. And We saw it with Sam a lot, especially during the Hillary Clinton one, where he did this whole episode with Andrew Sullivan about all the things that are wrong with Hillary Clinton. And he just saw it as this huge backfire. Like it just backfired on him horribly because Trump won. And he was like, I think Sam is just doing this calculation where he says, I'm never doing that again. Like I'm never going to openly criticize my candidate that hard, like the way he just went in on Hillary Clinton for 2 hours or however long that podcast was. And I think Sam can concede a little bit, but yeah, just to hit on that point about hypocrisy, like both sides do it. Even the most intellectually honest people that I know, and Sam's up there, like even he falls in. He's not
Yeah, I
clean
think
from all their.
he's just, I think Sam's become, I think one of the things that drives Sam, I don't know, this is like kind of my pet hypothesis of, this is somebody that I've been following since I was a kid, pretty much 18, 19, growing up. He's somebody that I've always admired, but I think that something with Sam is that in 2015, when Trump started becoming really popular and he became the main Republican, candidate, he went really hard against Trump. And I think back then, if you listen to those episodes, I think he didn't really think there was a chance that Trump could win. And a lot of these episodes, I haven't heard them in a while, but I still remember what he would say. And it wasn't just Sam, so I don't want to, just pick on him. There was a lot of people that were talking about how grave of a threat Trump posed to world peace and, nuclear war, and there was a real chance that, we were going to make it past his presidency. And I think a big thing that Sam, I think he now feels like he has to justify in his head why he went as hard as he did, in those previous years. And it's one of those things where I feel like, if he were a little bit more intellectually honest with himself, like us, we can still criticize Trump all we want, but we can recognize the good things that he's done. We can recognize the good things in terms of foreign policy that he did, and the clear track record that he had a pretty good, other than COVID, that 2020 year, which was really horrible. I'm not trying to downplay it. But other than that, it wasn't the end of the world that he was president. And yeah, he talked a lot of shit, and yeah, all this stuff. But other than that, we didn't see a nuclear apocalypse. And I think with Sam, a big thing that I think still drives him is that, 2021 and what happened on January 6th, I think proved a lot of things in their own head, like, oh, well, this was the reason why. And again, yeah, I fully grant them that, yeah, that example shows how bad of a character and how having a president with a good character is really important. And I completely understand that. But I still think they took it to such a degree of Hitler and this is the end of democracy and this is the end of the world, that I think for people like Sam Harris, I think that, they have to justify that character type of person that they viewed in him. And yeah, another thing that I wanted to talk about was I don't know, this whole talk that, in the last couple of weeks we've seen it go up to a really dramatic levels of the accusations of fascism and Nazi type rallies, and the Democrats have really, just
Yeah, I was
gone
going to bring that
balls
up.
out of this, implication. And we saw it in the debate as well. And I again, I think Sam is, a super smart person, and I still really respect his opinion. And he always makes me think twice, even especially when I disagree with him. But even he was pretty, willing to throw out the fascist label, especially in that debate. But yeah, I can say my thoughts on it, but I don't know if you wanted to just say what you thought about what's been happening with
Yeah,
him.
it's an old I mean, it's an old playing card that the Democrats have, and they definitely went hard on it in 2015 when they were trying to label him the next dictator. I think over the last couple of weeks, it's fallen a little bit flat in a lot of political commentary that I follow and that I've seen. They've mocked it, rightfully so, because it is pretty ridiculous. Like we've seen who Trump is. I don't think he's Mussolini. I don't think that he's Hitler. Um, he's not Ceausescu, any dictator that you want to throw out there. But the big one, Hitler, he's not Hitler. He's not this authoritarian, demented person that wants to just,
But he does. But
overthrow our
this is
government.
where I
But
like this. We can.
or,
Sorry to interrupt, just because he does have clearly authoritarian instincts, right? He does have authoritarian
yeah, that's
leanings,
what I was going to
so
bring
he
up.
is
But
authoritarian in that regard.
yeah, I think he's authoritarian. He has instincts that are authoritarian. I think he has the way that he campaigns. There's definitely echoes. Like I think you can definitely see and you can definitely make comparisons as to some of the to be specific. Like so, a lot of the tribalism that Trump brings up, right? A lot of the media is the enemy of the people, right? He points to a specific group, either it's immigrants or in this case the media, talking about how they're enemies of the people. And if you look at how Hitler rose to power, how a lot of these authoritarians rose to power, it's a very similar playbook. And so, but just because they have similar playbooks, like I don't think that Trump just doesn't strike me as Hitler. And I also think that the conditions are very different for him to become Hitler. Like we have very strong systems of government, we've got very strong institutions, and there's a lot of checks and balances in play that weren't in place when people like Mussolini or people like Hitler were rising to power, right? Essentially, Hitler became chancellor and dictator because the president, um, President Hindenburg, just signed off on it, right? But that wouldn't happen. Like, who is going to sign off on Trump being the dictator? So I think it's true that Trump does have these authoritarian bends, and like that does there are similarities that you can draw, but I don't think that it's not the same though. The rhetoric's not the same. Like the rhetoric coming out of Nazi Germany and pre-Nazi Germany was, it was very anti-Semitic. It was a lot of the iconography and a lot of the media that you would read. Der Spiegel, I think, what was the journal that
Yeah,
they had? That one, like you see all these weird, super anti-Semitic things, like their policies, and it's just a very different kind of dialect and rhetoric that you see from Trump. Like I said, there is similarities, but I think it's very different.
yeah. I mean, I would mostly agree with that, but I don't know. I being as somebody that always tries to understand where people are coming from, so whether it's the left or the right, I can I can picture an argument from a left wing person, and I can sympathize with what they're saying when they say things like Trump is a fascist, right? I might not agree with it, but I can see how you can make that connection. And this is just the funny thing about humans in general, right? You can compare anyone to anyone, right? I can compare MLK to Hitler, and I can say, well, MLK was like Hitler. And obviously, any sane person would be like, well, what do you mean? MLK or Gandhi, how are they like Hitler? Well, they both took a shit in the morning. They both took a shower at night. They both, had sex with their wives. They're humans at the end of the day. And you can make that comparison with almost anybody, right? The the point that should go without saying and should be paramount is it should, right? Words should have meaning. And when we're throwing out these types of accusations, there should be a direct line connecting the dots. And again, if you want to call what Trump is doing and the type of rhetoric that he espouses and the types of things that he says as fascist like, again, I could understand that argument because, okay, when you have examples like Trump saying that they're poisoning the blood of our nation, or Trump saying that, you know,
Immigrants are eating dogs.
yeah, immigrants are eating dogs, or the what he called, I don't know who he called as vermin, right? These are very just types of like inflammatory and just the worst type of rhetoric you could think of. And then, okay, in that example, yeah, you could say it's fascist like in a way because, you know, Hitler used to do that, and now we're seeing Trump do the same. And then you can point to, you know, where he wants to go after CBS, or he wants to go off after the media, or he's talking about the enemy within. You know, these types of things, again, you can see that comparison. But the reason the where I jump off that train and I say, well, this has gone too far, is you can make those comparisons, but the thing that matters is that one, the reason why I jump off the train is because fascism and Hitler and Nazism, this was such a unique type of evil that existed in the world not even that long ago. And I think there should be a special class of people that we reserve that word for, right? We reserve that word of fascism. We reserve the word of Nazism. We reserve the word of Hitler like, because it was such a unique type of evil. And, you know, what do we call people? What do we call Nazis now that are literally yelling, kill all the Jews, right? That are waving around Nazi flags? What are they now, right? If Trump is a Nazi, what are they? And then you also have to dig a little bit deeper, because humans are complicated. Human beings are not just this black and white thing. Yes, Trump has said all those crazy things. Yes, Trump has done a lot of crazy things, and a lot of things that you can point to directly. Okay, that may be fascist like, but Trump also was the most pro-Israel candidate or president in the history of America. And he has, you know, his son is Jared Kushner. His daughter is married to this Jewish guy. He's the most pro-Israel candidate ever. And so how is that a Nazi, right? And again, when people try to compare the rally that he had to the Nazi Madison Square Garden rally in the 1930s, right? You saw Jewish flags there. You saw blacks and Hispanics and all kinds of people who clearly are not Nazis who are supporting this man. And again, it's not to say that there wasn't a lot of fucked up shit in that rally. There was a bunch. It wasn't even just the Tony Hinchcliffe joke. I don't know if you saw the clips of all these speakers who were just saying the most insane, divisive crap. I would agree with all of that, but to call it a Nazi rally, again, it's just pure hyperbole. It's over the top. It's unnecessary. I understand it, and if people, it's just part of the game. Trump does the same thing. This is again the hypocrisy point that it just drives you crazy, where it's just on both sides, and it's so obvious, right? Trump all the time calls Kamala Harris a communist, calls her a Nazi, also calls her a fascist, also, and it's just they both do it. You know, it's just the politics part of the game, and I don't know. It's just
I think we don't, I mean, it's, how do I phrase this? We don't know what Trump is going to manifest as until it's already happened, and until we're 20, 30 years removed and historians can look back and call it something that would be more appropriate to call it. Like, if you think back to the 1930s and the 1920s when these rallies and Nazi rallies were taking place, like what would you call somebody like Hitler? What would you call somebody like Goebbels before this connotation around fascism really took place? Like imagine 1920s, 1930s rolls around and somebody's yelling, "This guy that I've heard of, Hitler, he's a fascist," and everybody kind of look like, "What is that? What does that mean?" And so it's a sad, and we need something similar. Like we need something within our vocabulary where we can ring the alarm bells for something that is concerning, right? Trump, as we've talked about, is a concerning figure. And I don't know what he means for democracy in general, but how were people ringing the alarm bells in the 20s and the 30s without, in a similar sense? Because I think that that's what people are trying to
yeah.
do.
I
They're
think
trying to make
I
their
no good.
or just to finish the point, they're trying to cement into people, but we just don't have the
Yeah,
terminology. They're
yeah,
trying to ring the
exactly.
alarm
And
bells.
people don't know history. People don't know. So the easiest thing, people only know Hitler. People know what is it, Murphy's Law, or the law where it's like
Godwin's
how,
law
yeah,
or
God,
something like that.
yeah, exactly. With how long does it take in an argument to reach Hitler comparisons? And it's because again, people don't know history. The only thing people think Hitler bad, Hitler the worst, Hitler the devil. So it's the only thing that we compare it to. And it's again, it's just a way of communicating to the masses, hey, this human here is bad. Hitler, don't vote for him, or else we might get bad Hitler devil. And that's the reason why. But again, if you're a person that actually cares about specific terminology and the vernacular of human beings and specific types of languages that we use, you want to be accurate in how you describe people for the very exact reason that you just said, to be able to call out what we're calling out. And I think authoritarian is a good word. Far right might be a good word. Um, I don't know, autocratic tendencies, autocratic impulses. He loves dictators. He sucks up to dictators. That's all bad. I would fully agree with all of these words to label him, but I think that to underscore everything we're talking about, especially right now, we are calling Trump the most pro-Israel candidate ever, a Nazi. Meanwhile, there's literal Nazi-like protesters and people who have been making the rounds the last year all over America and all over Europe, chanting literal death to Jews, supporting literal terrorist entities that murder Jews for the sake of murdering Jews, pro Hamas flags, waving them all over America, all over Europe. And where's the condemnation? Where's the media? Where are they? Have we seen a news story about this? Have we seen any types of main report? Has Kamala been forced to answer a question about why so many of her supporters or so many of the Democratic Party have been marching in step with these psychopathic, literal Nazis? Okay, the way you know that these people are literal Nazis is in the October 7th memorial, the year anniversary, you had a horde of thousands and thousands of people marching on the memorial for the victims of the terrorist attack on October 7th in New York. These people were literally what other thing would you be marching there for if not to support what happened that day? The massacre of hundreds of innocent people at a fucking rave. Those are literal Nazis. Those are people literally calling for the death of innocent Jews. Those are literal Nazis. And the media is just fucking blind to it. They're marching in our streets, shooting people. What is it on Sunday? You had this person yell Allah Akbar and shooting this Jewish person. You see it every day, and those are the literal Nazis of the modern day. The death cult that is jihadism, the death cult that is Islamist far right extremism. That is the Nazism of today. And it's not to
Yeah.
say that there isn't real threats with Trump. It's not to say none of that, but yeah, it is to say that the real threats that we face today as a world, the main threats of Iran, the main threats of jihadist terrorism, those are the things that worry me at night. And that is one of the reasons why I feel like, now talking all this over, I think that, I think for all of his faults, I think Trump, at the very least, recognizes that threat. At the very least, recognizes that in the world, you need to carry a big stick. Like Ben Shapiro said in the podcast, foreign policy isn't that complicated. You got to carry a big stick and you got to hit people in the head once they pass that line that you said not to pass. And this was the biggest fuck up of Obama. This was the biggest fuck up of Biden and every type of Democrat that's been in power. They said, don't cross this red line, and people cross it and they don't do shit. Obama said, don't fucking cross that red line with the the gas, using the gas bombs and the sarin gas, and Mossad crossed it, and he didn't do shit. And then he let Russia come in and just take over and just spread their influence. And that was one of the biggest reasons why we're in this fucking quagmire in the first place. He pulled out of Iraq and then had to come back in. We were reducing our presence in the world, and bad guys fill it. And then what did Biden do? The same thing. He told Russia, don't invade Ukraine. And what the fuck? Putin doesn't give a fuck. There's no type of deterrence. There's no type of, because they don't take these people seriously. They're not threatened by them. And that's the biggest reason why Trump, for the 4 years, you can't deny, people always, this is one of the things that drives me crazy with people that are very smart, like Destiny or like Sam Harris, where they'll be like, oh, well, Trump and Russia, and they'll have all these things to say about Trump, about how horrible he was for Russia and how he kissed his ass, and all this foreign policy crap. If you're just a person that's just from the outside and you just want to look at the reality of a situation, the reality is Putin invaded Biden in office, not with Trump. That's the reality. Okay, for the 4 years that Trump was in power, we didn't have any new wars. We didn't have he killed Soleimani, right? His threat, his he scared the fuck out of people, and that was the biggest reason
I
why.
don't think it's so much as unpredictability. I just think he has a good sense of for foreign
Yeah,
policy, and I
it's because
think he has a good sense
people
for
didn't
right
know
and
what he
wrong.
was
And
capable of doing, and that was a big
I
thing.
think
And
it's
also they knew that he was capable of starting shit. Again, it's like
I think he's not
don't
afraid
start no
to.
shit, there won't be no shit. And that's the thing that people have to realize. Like, military, you have to be the biggest bully in the playground, or else you start getting beat up by people, or else people start taking advantage of you. This is why, if I ever have kids, I'm gonna teach them martial arts as soon as they're kids, and how to protect themselves. Because again, that's just human nature. People are gonna want to fuck with you, and they want to be the biggest bully in the plate yard.
And
And
I think the best thing to say about Trump on foreign policy was he's not afraid to take unilateral action. Like he wouldn't always just, well, let me go talk to my allies and start a 6 month committee and figure out what the right thing, what the wrong thing is. And then by that time, it's already too late. And, some allies have been compromised and some allies think differently, and then nothing gets done. I think with Trump, he wasn't afraid to do things unilaterally. But,
yeah, there's like
um,
this like technocratic, like, there's this like intelligentsia vibe with Obama and Biden, of like the expert class. Like, you heard this too in the podcast with Sam Harris and Ben Shapiro, where Sam Harris was like, oh, well, the economist experts all say that Kamala is gonna be, and it's like, I get expertise, I get the importance of all that, but I don't know, there's just something to be said about, one, the big failure of the expert class during COVID, but setting that aside, there's just something about just running on instinct, right? That's the thing about Trump that you have to commend him for, that he's somebody that is just instinctually, he acts on his instincts, right? He doesn't need your full diatribe of, like you said, 6 months of let's study this and is it gonna be the proper, like, sometimes you just have to go, right? Sometimes you
and
just
that's
like,
what we're essentially electing these people for. Like, are you a leader or are we leading by committee? Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
that's what it means to be a leader. Like, yeah, it does come with responsibilities. You do have to take responsibility for your action, but we do elect you to make decisions. And I mean, that's why it's scary that Biden has dementia and that's he's the one making decisions. But yeah, like ultimately we do pick these people and we elect these people because we trust that they are going to make good decisions
Right.
without having to
Yeah,
always revert back
delegate.
to,
Yeah, they're the
yeah,
president. They're the ones making the decisions. Exactly. Like, there shouldn't be a delegation when you're the president. Like, the Bucks were electing you to be the decision maker. And
no.
and yeah, I mean, it is sad. One of another thing that I was thinking about is how, hopefully, I don't think it's going to happen in these next 4 years with either one of these candidates, but in the next, maybe, I don't know, after 4 years of this, that is one hopeful thing actually about the Trump presidency, bringing in somebody like Elon Musk, where I feel like he is kind of go in there and just try to put a new approach, right, to certain types of things. And there was this clip that went viral like a couple of days ago where there was this guy fucking blanking on his name, but he's like one of the big tech guys, but he's super smart guy. But he was talking about how efficient Elon Musk is, right? What makes him so efficient as a human being? And he was just like in his he explains it way better than I'm going to explain it, but in a short version of it, he just said how so many companies have like, these meetings and like things take so long to get done, right? There's this, like, you have to go through this process of all these forms and all this bullshit, right? It's just bullshit meaning, bullshit this, bullshit things. And then, oh, can we test this rocket? Because no, well, we have to go through this regulation. And what if the rocket explodes? And like, again, all this just jibber jabber nonsense. And the thing that separates Elon Musk from all these other companies and what makes him so successful is he just gets to the substance, right? Give me what matters in the fucking bullet form chat GTP version of it. And okay, yeah, maybe a rocket will explode. Maybe this will happen, but progress is being made, right? I'm testing these rockets out, right? 5 rockets explode. Okay, maybe the sixth one, I'm going to learn how to actually land it. And boom, look what happened with that like a week or two ago. And I think that's what we're talking about, right? There is this, like, again, this like technocracy, this intelligentsia of things need to be done in the process. And I feel like one of the hopeful things of putting in somebody like Elon Musk is that I'm hoping he brings this type of vibe, and I do think he will, to government, because there is so much waste, there is so much bullshit, there is so much just again this need to go through the process and the and
And
yeah.
I mean, part of that is by design. Like with our government, we don't want things to change too
Yeah.
quickly, and we also don't want people to just be able to change things on impulse. But yeah, I do agree with with the general notion that we do need people in office that are going to get things done. But I mean, overall, like we've seen, like we don't want just somebody acting on impulse and being able to make those
Yeah,
changes
it
immediately,
is, it
because
is a
it's a
balance.
double-edged sword. Because
Yeah.
what if, like right now, okay, I overall I like Elon. I think he's done a lot of great things for humanity, but he might be going a little off the rails recently, but
Yeah.
overall I like him. But what happens when you have that same person come into office and they're all about trans rights, and they only want to give
Yeah.
hormone blockers to kids? Like, you can imagine any kind of insane situation where that
Yeah.
do-gooder, that get shit done attitude kind of backfires on you.
Yeah. I think that, that is one of the great things about our system is, it's again, it's a double-edged sword. But I think that, I don't know, I think for America especially, I think that we've reached a point where having that type, I think we've leaned towards too much on that type of system. I think that right now, with the threats that we face in China and Russia and Iran, and you know not being the world leader anymore, the our country falling apart, so much internal conflict, I think that all of these, very real types of problems that we face in the 21st century, I think it calls for a new type of, I don't want to say completely new way of governing. I still believe in the Constitution and I still believe in America, but I do think that, heavy reforms do need to be made. And I think that right now, there is a lot of good in America, but there is still a lot of bad, right? I always try to look at things, in the glass half full type of way, but I think the reality is that a lot of people are really struggling right now, not just with inflation, but with expenses and like housing prices are just so ridiculous, right? Everything's like, I think that I think there people need to be able to think outside the box, and I think we need new solutions. And I think so much of the Constitution, so much of the good that America brought for so many years, you know, it worked great for 200 years ago, 100 years ago. And again, I'm not calling for a full removal of the Constitution or nothing like that. I'm still a conservative at heart. And I think that, you know, we shouldn't just change things for the sake of changing things. And we shouldn't just become part of the revolution for the sake of it. But all of this is to say that I do think that we do face really grave threats. And I think that, again, we need to start thinking outside the box and we need new ideas. And a lot of people are suffering right now. And again, we need new types of thinking. We need new types of solutions. And we shouldn't be just committed to like, oh no, we have to follow this because it says in the this and the that. It's like, no, we don't have to do any of that actually. We can try new things and see what works, see what doesn't work. And I don't know, I think that we shouldn't be, again, I feel like I'm a conservative at heart, and I believe in that ideal of following the past because it's the best predictor of like all this history that we have. And you know, these rules exist for a reason, and I do believe in that. But I also see the importance of the threat of the new world that we live in, right? The AI, all this new shit that's coming up. It's the world's changing so fast, and I don't know. I don't think we should be stuck and forced to to rules that don't make sense anymore. I don't know.
I also think that internationally, the U.S. has, especially in the last 10, 15 years, they're kind of, there's overwhelming anxiety to not want to fuck everything up. And I think obviously this is a direct result of
The
the
Iraq War.
aftermath or how people remember the Iraq War, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you think about the Iraq War, like the after, like how people remember it, like they really don't want to fuck it up, and they understand the power that the United States has, you know, internationally with the military that we have. And you see a lot of these candidates, and they're just so crippled, like they have this anxiety, like they're like, no, let's appease everybody, let's just try to get along with everybody, you know, like multilateralism. Let's like even if you just take something like Hamas, Israel, like they're trying to negotiate desperately with Hamas. Like, let's put together these negotiation deals, like with Iran. Like, no, let's work together. We'll find solutions. And it's this kind of crippling anxiety to not want to fuck up, not want to be the person that's remembered for Iraq. Like that's they don't want to leave behind that legacy that really does damage our foreign policy. We need somebody that, you know, we are going to make mistakes, unfortunately, but I think we're also going to do a lot of good things in the world, and we need somebody that's not afraid to really stand up for our allies and understand that there are certain regimes and certain countries and leaders that have no interest in maintaining this world order that we all thrive in. Like people like Vladimir Putin has no interest in maintaining a world order that we live in, right? People like the mullahs in Iran have no interest in this. They just want to spread their version of extremism and destroy Israel first and then America second. And then the list goes on and on. But so internationally, I do want to see us move forward from this anxiety that's just been riddling America. And we need to understand that we do have a role to play to maintain this order that we've all thrived in and that we all benefit from. And yeah, domestically too. Domestically, it's obvious that we need good ideas because there's a lot of wealth out there, and a lot of people feel like they're missing out on that wealth. And it's very I don't know, not what's the right word? Like it's very disheartening to see so many people just thriving, and you just feel like you're kind of missing out on the party. Like, how is it that housing prices are just so insane? People are selling houses left and right at $1 million valuations when these houses aren't $1 million. You know, like who's buying these? Who's affording these $1 million homes? Like, what party am I not? What, like, how am I missing out on this party? Like, where am I missing out on all this wealth that's apparently just been accumulating? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people are just struggling with this kind of tension of like, how is everybody else doing it? You know, how's everybody else buying these houses that are ridiculously priced? And obviously there's certain answers to it, but I think that tension, as long as that tension remains, like we need these kind of almost like radical ideas as to how to fix that tension.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, before you go into the economy thing, I think to close off on foreign policy, and I think to close off a little bit also because I'm at 8%, so I don't know how much longer I have
Yeah.
for battery. But I did want to talk about, or go off of what you said about foreign policy and about how so many leaders are scared to fuck up. And I think I found this quote, this tweet by it was unrelated, but this he's talking about personal relationships, but I think it goes off into foreign policy and politics as well. And it's like a true idiom of life. And it says, many people think avoiding conflict reduces harm, but somewhat counterintuitively, in the long run, avoiding conflict actually increases harm because of all the problems that could have been dealt with swiftly are given space to grow into even bigger problems. Reality punishes cowards. And I think that, to me, when I read that, I was like, dude, that to me encapsulates so much of what went wrong after the Iraq War and so much of what went wrong in our foreign policy as America, where after the Iraq War, it seemed like, even before that as well, but even more so to such a degree after it, where the policy of Obama was and Biden was again just avoid conflict. You see it now with Biden with the Hamas, with the war that's been going on for over a year, where basically every day he's just putting, oh, we're gonna end the war, we're gonna end the conflict, and again, what is the point of ending? We were asking when the conflict was just going to continue, because if Hamas wasn't dealt with, the conflict was just going to go on into perpetuity, and Hamas is just never going to not give up. And I feel like that's such a big thing with Iran as well, where people are doing whatever they can to avoid war, to avoid conflict. And am I blacking out, or can you hear me?
No, so good. Secondary.
Oh, no, it looked kind of weird. But yeah, no, my point is just how with Iran, especially a country like this where they hang their people, innocent people every day, and they are such a threat, and they cause so much ruckus and suffering all over the Middle East. Right, we do so much to avoid conflict, and Biden's always telling Israel, "Don't react. Oh, you already don't respond if they did this, and just take the win." And again, this just like reflexive instinct to avoid conflict, to avoid any type of escalation, any type of, when all you're doing again is just putting it off. You're just putting it off. There's this really interesting story of Reagan in the 1980s, where he had the opportunity to respond towards Hezbollah after the 1983 terrorist attack, where I think it was like 200 or 300 Marines were blown up by Hezbollah, and he had a chance to respond and kill one of the main Iranian, not just generals, but I think the Khamenei was there, the Shah, not the Shah, the leader, the supreme leader, and he didn't act in the 1980s because he was fearful it was going to cause, an even bigger war. But I think looking back on that now, those, you're talking about the 1980s. If Reagan had acted, and Reagan was you know, to me, a great president, but he was more neoconservative than most presidents, and he didn't act. And what did that do? It just let the problem grow and grow and grow into what we have now, where we're faced with the potential nuclear threat of a jihadist death cult. And again, at the same time, you never know where the world might go. You do act, and maybe the world ends up getting worse because of it, or maybe you don't. And but I think that there's just certain things where you just have to realize that putting off the conflict, there's just realities of the world that you have to deal with. And in that moment, it might be the tough decision. Yeah, you might sacrifice. Yeah, you might have to lose this or and that. But one of the things, the biggest, not to go off on tangents, but I think one of the biggest things that prevents presidents from making the right decision so many times is that they're always conscious of the political outcome. They're always conscious of, oh, this is going to hurt me or this is going to benefit me. They're not thinking about the country as a whole. And this is one of the reasons why dictators like Xi Jinping or Putin have such an advantage over us, because they don't have to worry about the next 4 years. They don't have to worry about their party, not voting or yes voting. They can just make the decision for the long run, for the 10, 20, 30 years, for what they see as the benefit of their country. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're going to have to fix as a country when we're competing against these countries where they have such a bigger time frame. And again, these presidents, they're not thinking about the country as a whole as better. All they're thinking about is winning for the next 4 years. That's what drives them. And I think that's one of the biggest problems right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. I would agree overall. I mean, I think you have two very, like, just, it's unfortunate, but I mean, the examples line up. Like, you have Iraq in 2008, or, kind of like that general time frame. And then you also have Syria, where to 2014, whenever the Syrian civil war started, we didn't intervene. So you have two countries neighboring each other, and one of them we did intervene. We had massive military force, and then the other one we didn't do anything. And look how that worked out. Like, it didn't work out well for anybody. Arguably even worse in Syria. And so, yeah,
Wait, where did you intervene?
Where we didn't, like, where we intervened in Iraq, and then where we didn't
but
intervene.
But it's
Syria.
funny how that argument, but people always say we intervened in Iraq, but you could also say the same as that after Obama pulled out, that's when we got ISIS. We pulled out of Iraq and ISIS took over. We pulled out of Afghanistan and the Taliban took over. We didn't intervene in Syria, and Assad, committed an actual genocide on his own people, and Hezbollah
that was
gained
my argument.
More power. Yeah,
exactly. Like, there's unfortunately, hard decisions have to be made, but hard things, terrible things happen even when you don't act.
Yeah,
and you're doing the right thing. So
yeah, exactly. And it's the biggest thing is that the people. That's the reason why, again, I believe in democracy, but I think that there is a lot of negatives that do come with it, because again, the presidents are not necessarily acting in the best thing for the country as a whole. Again, they're acting as what is politically expedient. When Obama pulled out in Iraq, he was making a political calculation. The same thing with Biden in Afghanistan, and look where the biggest one was Syria. The biggest one was Syria, where you read these news reports about why Obama was just not doing shit when Assad was gassing his own people. And it was because, Ben Rhodes and Obama, they had this quote unquote policy of don't do dumb shit, don't involve yourself in the Middle East. And look where that led us. And again, it's just, people think that by not acting, that's but that's a good thing, or like you kind of like, it's kind of like you're deluding yourself in a way. Like, by you not acting, you're still acting, right? That's a choice. You're still acting, right? You're making a choice,
and you're not absolving yourself with consequences. Like, you're not absolving yourself. To me, like, not acting, you're not absolving
that's
yourself.
The reason why. That's the reason why they don't act, is because you can kind of like wipe your hands clean of it and say, well, I didn't, the act of actually doing something, like you can act. This is why, again, this is the problem with democracies, because the act of me doing the thing, it allows people to then point the finger and say, well, look, this is all your fault. But if I sit back and I don't do anything, which is still doing something, especially if I'm the person in power, well, I can just say, well, I couldn't act because this is what Obama said. The same thing. It's like, oh, well, I didn't have the congressional authorization, or, well, I couldn't act. Well, I didn't, you always have that out. And it's a big problem. But
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was a good podcast. My headphones are dying, and I think you're
for sure. Yeah, my laptop's about to die.
Yeah.
For sure.
Alrighty. Well, yeah, good chat. Maybe next time we can talk about foreign policy. That one is also one I just watched, so it'd be a good one to talk about.
Yeah, I saw it with Matt Taibbi. And
Yeah,
yeah, it was a good one.
good. Dude.
But yeah, we'll go more on that, deep on that next time.
Okay.
Once this shit show
Sounds
election is finally over. Yeah.
Cheers.
All right.
Alrighty.
All
Bye, bro.
righty. Thank you guys. See you
See you later. Yep.
later.
Bye.